I didn't ask for a celebration. After 4 years of back-to-back night shifts, caffeine-induced cramming, and pretending not to notice how my sister got away with skipping life like it was optional, I didn't expect anything. But when my mom called and said they were throwing a graduation party for me, I'll admit, my heart cracked open just a little. It was a sunny afternoon in our backyard, the one they used to host Lily's birthday parties every year. Blue and silver streamers danced in the breeze. A massive banner with "Congratulations, Dr. Aaron," stretched across the patio. I hadn't seen that banner yet. I was still in my car, staring through the windshield, not sure whether I should actually go in. For a second, I let myself believe this time would be different. Inside, the yard was buzzing with people. My dad's coworkers, neighbors I barely knew, even Aunt Maggie with her usual red lipstick and a lukewarm smile. My mother greeted me like she meant it. She hugged me tight and said, "We're so proud of you, honey." Pride, a word I hadn't heard directed at me in ever. I smiled, not because I believed it, but because I wanted to. Drinks were poured. Toasts were made. People asked me about my residency, about hospitals, about the future. For once, I wasn't Lily's older sister or Charles and Elaine's responsible one. I was Aaron, someone worth clapping for. Then came the cake. It was gorgeous, 3 tiers, white fondant, gold trim. My mother carried it like it was the crown jewel of the evening. Everyone crowded around. My dad chuckled. "Go ahead, take a look." So I did, and there it was, scrawled across the frosting in expensive chocolate script, "Congratulations, loser." Laughter. It started slow, my dad, then my mom trying to stifle it behind her wine glass. And Lily? She was doubled over, laughing so hard she nearly knocked her drink over. I just stood there. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a typo. It was the punchline to a joke I didn't know I was in on. I didn't say anything, not at first. I stared at the cake, at the careful lettering someone had probably approved twice, at my dad's smug face and Lily wiping tears from her eyes like she'd just seen the best Netflix comedy of the year. And for a moment I almost laughed too, because of course it wasn't real. Of course this party, the banner, the smiles, they were never for me. They were a performance, and I was the opening act who didn't know when to bow out. I scanned the crowd. People shifted awkwardly, avoiding eye contact. Not one person spoke up. Not Aunt Maggie, not Mr. Patel, not even Sophie, who once cried in my dorm room over a breakup and called me her rock. I could feel it bubbling inside me, not rage, not sadness, something sharper, calmer, like a string snapping in slow motion. I raised my glass. "To the decorations," I said. My voice didn't shake. The thought, the effort. This moment, I'll carry it with me. Silence. No one laughed now. My mom cleared her throat. My dad took a slow sip of beer. Lily looked confused, like the joke had gotten away from her. And to the future, I added, smiling like I meant it. Because I've finally figured out how to treat you, just like you've always treated me. And that was it. I downed the drink, set the glass on the table with a little clink. Then I turned, walked across the patio, and didn't look back until I reached the gate. Lily's smile was gone. My dad looked like he was about to say something, some half-acid plea or sarcastic jab. But I just said, "You'll figure it out." And then I left. No shouting, no drama, just clean, deliberate exit. The kind that says, "I'm done being convenient." They didn't know it yet, but the real party was just getting started. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for the calls to start. At first, it was just my mom's soft-voiced voicemails that said things like, "Honey, Lily's lease paperwork seems to be messed up. Can you check with the landlord?" Then came my dad, all bark and baritone, "Aaron, call me back, now." But I already knew what they were calling about. See, what they never realized, what they never cared to notice, was how much I was holding together. For years, I carried them. When Lily flunked her first year at college, who picked up the slack? I did. When she needed money for books, for Uber rides, for rent, I covered it, quietly, willingly at first. I told myself, she's just lost. She'll find her way. She never did. And my parents? They enabled it, defended it. She just needs time, my mother would say. Like time was something that came out of my wallet. When I got into med school, they sent a congrats text with a thumbs up emoji. When Lily got into a second-rate liberal arts school, after dropping out of her first, they threw a garden party and gifted her a car. I remember watching her unwrap the keys, everyone clapping like she'd cured cancer. I was standing in scrubs at the end of a double shift when they texted me a picture of it. No caption. And yet, I still picked up the phone when they called. I still Venmo'd Lily rent money when her stipend didn't come through. Spoiler, it never came through. I still paid the overdue electricity bill at their house once because my dad said he forgot and didn't want the neighbors to know. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was how much I had sacrificed just to stay afloat. The student loans, the 60-hour weeks, the residency interviews I almost missed because I was juggling their problems. And when Lily needed a co-signer for her new apartment near campus, they didn't ask, they informed me. You have good credit, my dad had said flatly. It won't cost you anything, just a signature. I should have said no, but I didn't. I was so used to saying yes. The word just slipped out like muscle memory. And they didn't even say thank you. 3 weeks before the cake, before the party, before the punchline, they assumed I'd do it again. That I'd keep being the safety net, the plan B, the walking credit score. But the second I saw those frosting letters, congratulations, loser, something in me finally clicked. That night, after I walked out of the party, I got in my car, pulled out my phone, and called Lily's landlord. I rescinded my co-signature, formally, legally, irrevocably. The next morning, I got an email confirmation. I was no longer financially responsible for her lease. I stared at the screen for a long time. It felt quiet, final, like deleting a file you've stared at for years. The panic didn't start until rent was due. That's when the calls picked up. At first, it was confusion. Then came guilt tripping. My mom left voicemails that sounded like she was on the verge of tears. Aaron, sweetheart, there's been a mistake. The apartment manager said your name is no longer on the lease. Lily might lose her place, please. Call us. My dad went straight to fury. You made a commitment. You gave your word. Your sister's future is on the line, and you're just walking away? But they weren't angry about the lease. They were angry that for once, I didn't ask how high when they said jump. They were angry that the version of me they relied on, the quiet, compliant, ever-responsible Aaron, was gone. The best part? I hadn't even gotten to the real damage yet. See, while they were busy celebrating Lily's second shot at college, they hadn't noticed that I'd quietly backed out of everything. Not just the lease, the tuition help they were counting on from me, gone. The quiet cash infusions I used to send without being asked, gone. The silent forgiveness I gave every time they overlooked me, also gone. I wasn't just stepping back. I was pulling the whole foundation out from under them. Lily didn't just lose her apartment. She lost her enabler. My parents didn't just lose their buffer. They lost the daughter who held it all together. And I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because I finally realized they were never going to choose me. Not once. Not when I stayed up all night helping Lily study for her exams while she scrolled through TikTok. Not when I gave up a vacation to pay one of their overdue property taxes. Not even when I walked across the stage as the first doctor in our entire family. They loved the idea of me, the convenience of me. But they never loved me. And that truth, as sharp and cold as it was, made everything else easier. So I let the calls come. I let the texts pile up. I let Lily spiral. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't rushing to fix it. And for the first time in their lives, they were going to feel it. It took them 22 days to get desperate enough for a real conversation. Until then, it was just noise. Missed calls, passive-aggressive texts, long-winded voicemails where my dad lectured me about duty and my mom tried to spin manipulation into concern. I didn't answer. I didn't even listen all the way through. I just watched the message count tick upward like some kind of countdown to accountability. Day 22. My dad called. I let it ring twice, then picked up. "Aaron," he snapped, skipping past any form of greeting. "What the hell did you do?" I tilted my head back on the couch, staring at the ceiling, beer in hand. "Hi, Dad. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Don't play games with me. You know what I'm talking about. Lily's lease is collapsing. The school's reaching out about missing tuition payments. You gave your word." "No," I said coolly. "You told me what I'd do. That's not the same thing." There was a pause. I could hear him breathing, heavy and irritated, like he was trying to process how I'd slipped out from under his expectations. "You need to take responsibility," he growled. "You're acting like a child." And there it was, the fallback insult. Childish. Not Lily blowing through a college fund like it was Monopoly money. Not Lily skipping classes to go on road trips and posting about it on Instagram while I was pulling overnight ER rotations. No, I was the problem. I let that sit a moment. Then I said, "I don't think I will." The silence on the other end was thick enough to slice. He sputtered something, a half-formed curse or command. I hung up. I let it ring when he called back. Twice more. Then my mom tried. Her tone was different, calmer, softer, drenched in that artificial sweetness she thought made her sound caring. "Aaron, sweetheart, I know the party wasn't what you expected," she started, "but you can't let that cloud your judgment." I smiled bitterly. "Cloud my judgment? You mean the part where your cake said I was a loser? It was just a joke," she insisted quickly, like rehearsed damage control. "We didn't mean anything by it." "Right," I said. "It's always just a joke, until I stop laughing." She hesitated. "But Lily's in trouble. She's about to lose her apartment, her classes." I cut in. "That sounds like a Lily problem." Her voice sharpened. "This is what family does. We support each other." I let out a small breath, controlled and even. "No, I supported you. For years. And what did I get in return? A cake that told me everything I needed to know." She fell silent. I could imagine her in the kitchen, clutching the phone like it was a lifeline, blinking hard to stop herself from crying, because crocodile tears always worked better when she saved them for later. "I just don't understand how you can do this to us," she whispered eventually. I didn't hesitate. "That's exactly the problem. You still think this is about you." Then I hung up. Gently, no drama, just closure. The next few days were quiet, unsettlingly so. I knew how this worked. My parents had probably gathered around the dinner table with furrowed brows and self-pitying sighs, debating whether I was going through some emotional phase. Lily was likely pacing in her overpriced apartment, trying to figure out how a 25-year-old woman with no job and no degree could possibly be expected to take care of herself. And then came the twist they really hadn't expected. Friday night, I was 3 episodes deep into a true crime binge when my phone buzzed. "Lily." I let it ring. She called again. And again. By the 5th try, I picked up. "What the hell did you do?" she shouted, not even pretending to be polite. "You'll have to be more specific." "The tuition," she hissed. "The deposit. It's gone. The school says it never arrived. I'm being dropped from enrollment." Ah, that part. See, the co-signing was just the appetizer. The main course was me pulling every plug they'd plugged into me without asking. The tuition support, the quiet monthly transfers, the emergency backup fund my mom had once called our little safety net, like it was a family trust instead of my savings. Gone. I'd walked away from it all. Not out of vengeance, but because I finally recognized the cost of keeping their lives running was my own. "Fix it," Lily screeched. "You promised." "No," I said. "You assumed." Big difference. You're ruining my future. I almost laughed. Her future. As if mine had been handed to me on a velvet tray. As if I hadn't scraped my way through school on loans, scholarships, and instant noodles, while she got second chances like breath mints. Maybe it's time you figured things out on your own, I said evenly. She went quiet for a second, then tried a new angle. Aaron, please. I can't do this without help. I felt something shift. Not guilt, not satisfaction, just peace. Yeah, I said. I know. That's the point. Then I hung up. And this time, I didn't even wait for the call back. Because she and they were finally learning what it meant to stand alone. They didn't call for a while after that. I think my mom needed time to script the next performance. Maybe something weepy, something guilt-laced and smothered in nostalgia. My dad probably paced the living room, muttering about respect and bloodlines, as if DNA was enough to buy loyalty. And Lily? I pictured her curled on a friend's couch, blaming everyone but herself for the fallout she never saw coming. But I wasn't waiting anymore. The silence didn't sting like it used to. It felt clean, like an infection finally drained. I moved through my days lighter. My apartment felt bigger, brighter. I started sleeping through the night. I stopped checking my phone for messages that used to feel like lifelines, but were really just tripwires dressed as family. Then, about a week later, it came. My mother's voice, brittle and breathy, cracked through the phone before I even said hello. Aaron, we need to talk. I didn't sigh. I didn't brace. I just listened. Lily's been dropped from enrollment. The school deadline passed. She's back home now. She paused, as if letting that detail settle like dust on furniture. We weren't prepared for this. I said nothing. She went on, trying to fill the silence with meaning. The bills are piling up. The landlord says we're behind. You always used to help us with those. Your father's looking for options. But I'm not one of them anymore, I finished. She gasped softly. Don't say that. Why not? I asked. It's true. And honestly, Mom, you should have realized it the moment you handed me that cake. It was a mistake, she whispered. A bad joke. No, I said gently. It was honest. Maybe the most honest thing you've ever given me. She went quiet. For once, I think she understood that this wasn't about the joke, or the lease, or the tuition. It was about years of choosing convenience over care, choosing Lily, choosing to ignore me until they needed me. I never meant to hurt you, she said, voice trembling. I believed that. In the same way you believe someone didn't mean to forget your birthday. They just had better things to remember. But you did, I said, over and over. And now, I'm choosing me. You're punishing us. I shook my head even though she couldn't see it. No, I'm freeing myself. She let out a soft sob. But we're family. Only when it's convenient for you, I replied. The rest of the time, I was just the emergency plan you didn't have to think. Another silence. This one longer. Thicker. You don't owe us anything, she finally said, like she was swallowing her own words in shame. I nodded. You're right. I don't. Then, for the last time, I hung up. They tried a few more times, of course. My dad sent me an email that was more bark than apology. Lily texted me 2 sentences that read more like an ultimatum than an olive branch. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about peace. The kind of peace that comes when you stop begging to be seen and start living like you were never invisible. Lily never went back to school. The deadline passed. The tuition window closed. The apartment was gone. She moved back in with our parents, a full-grown woman with no degree, no job, and no plan. A storm of entitlement with nowhere left to land. My parents, they couldn't afford to support her anymore. Turns out, cutting off your emotional punching bag and personal ATM has consequences. The call stopped completely after I sent one final email. Please forward all financial concerns to a professional. I no longer handle unpaid emotional debts. I never heard from them again. Months passed. I started my residency. I bought myself a new coffee maker, one that didn't leak and didn't remind me of home. I made friends who didn't ask for pieces of me in exchange for affection. I joined a hiking group. I started therapy. I began to write again. It was quiet. It was honest. It was mine. One afternoon, while unpacking a new bookshelf, I found the invitation to that graduation party, the one with my name misspelled in cheap glitter ink. I smiled, and then I threw it out, because that chapter was done, burned out, closed, and in its place, a story where I was finally the main character, a story where loser became the girl who stopped paying for other people's comfort, a story where silence wasn't punishment, it was power, and I had never felt more free. Story 2. I booked a red-eye from Seattle to Raleigh, with the kind of optimism you only get when you're still clinging to illusions. My dad was retiring after nearly 40 years in aviation maintenance, and there was a party-planned ballroom venue, catered hors d'oeuvres, even a jazz quartet according to the family email thread. But I didn't get that email. I heard about the party from my cousin Maya, who assumed I'd be there. I assumed I'd be there too. After all, I'm his daughter. His only daughter. I landed on a humid Saturday morning, jet-lagged and running on airport coffee. The hotel hosting the event was all polished brass and orchids in vases. I walked in, clutching a neatly wrapped gift bag, wearing a navy wrap dress I picked out just for the occasion. Inside the envelope was a card, a handwritten note, and a personal check for $6. Enough to help fund the dream cruise Dad kept talking about. It was my way of saying, I still care, even if the words never left my mouth. I approached the check-in table with a hopeful smile. Name? The receptionist asked, scanning a clipboard. Claire Delaney. I'm here for the retirement party, Charles Delaney. She scrolled, frowned, scrolled again. I'm sorry. I don't see you on the list. It's probably under family. I'm his daughter. Her expression shifted in that tight, sympathetic way that made my stomach turn. Just a moment, MAAM. A few minutes later, a staff member escorted me, not inside, but to a side hallway, sterile and empty. And there they were, Dad, my half-brother Jake, and his wife, Marina. Jake looked smug. Marina couldn't meet my eyes. And my father? He was all business. This is a family event, Dad said flatly. I blinked. You know I'm your family, right? Or was there a DNA test I missed? Jake scoffed. Claire, don't make this about you. And just like that, the gift bag felt heavier in my hand. You invited the Turners, I said, voice barely above a whisper. They live down the block and once threatened to sue you over a fence. Dad didn't flinch. It's about who's been there, who brings peace. You made your choices. That line hit harder than it should have. I'd always thought that showing up, paying his bills, covering medical emergencies, those counted as being there. Apparently not. I left without raising my voice. Walked past the bar where champagne was being set up, past the welcome sign with Dad's face on it, grinning with a fishing rod, like some magazine ad for a retirement fantasy. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I found a cafe and just sat. I stared at the check, flipped over a napkin and started writing, not out of anger, but out of something deeper, exhaustion. I crossed out the amount, wrote void in block letters, 3 times, for good measure. The letter I wrote wasn't planned, it wasn't poetic, but it was the first honest thing I'd put down in years. Not because I wanted to hurt him, because I was done begging to be seen. Flashback. The vending machine years love in my family worked on a transaction system. You'd give loyalty, money, effort. Maybe you get a compliment, a thank you, a nod of approval if Mercury's in a good mood. If not, you get labeled dramatic, selfish, difficult. When I was 10, Dad used to call me Sunshine after every spelling bee win, every soccer goal. By 15, I had pneumonia and missed school for 2 weeks. He told everyone I was overreacting. I had a 103-degree fever, but I still wanted his attention, even if I had to earn it by nearly dying. Then came Jake. Jake the Wonder Boy. Jake who totaled his car and was still called young and learning. I got a speeding ticket once Dad lectured me on fiscal responsibility for an hour. Still, I paid the ticket. And years later, I moved out at 19 driven, not by bravery, but survival. Dad would ask for help, always with that tone of mild disappointment. Claire, I wouldn't ask if I didn't need it. I paid anyway. Co-signed Jake's auto loan. Covered Dad's overdue electric bill. Paid Morena's dental work when their insurance lapsed. Not rich, just foolishly hopeful. 2 months ago, Dad told me he wanted to retire early and see the world. Said 63 was the new 50. Said Marina had always dreamed of Greece. He asked if I could help with the cruise. "You're young," he said. "You'll make it back. This is my one big ask." I didn't say no. I said I'd think about it. The next day I got a text message received, loud and clear. That was it. No follow-up. No RSVP acknowledgement. Just silence. I still flew out, check in hand, because part of me still wanted to be the good daughter. The letter, the drop, the fallout back at the cafe. The letter grew into something longer. Honest. Cutting but not cruel. A postscript of my entire relationship with him. Then I walked to the nearest mailbox and dropped it in. The calm that followed, it wasn't joy. It was the vacuum. The quiet after a collapse. 3 days later, 53 missed calls. Some from Dad. Some from unknown numbers. One from my Aunt Lydia, who once said my tone was the reason I didn't get invited to family brunch. Apparently, Dad opened the letter at the party. During the speeches, thought it was a tribute. Instead, he pulled out a voided check and a letter that read like a memoir of neglect. People stared. Marina left. Cake went untouched. He called me afterward. "Claire, I think there's been a misunderstanding. That word again. His Swiss Army knife." Jake messaged next. "You blew up Dad's night. Happy now? No, how are you? Know what happened. Just blame." But something had shifted. I didn't feel the urge to respond, to explain, to justify. The man who told me I wasn't family was now trying to spin a damage control narrative. But the curtain had dropped. The illusion was broken. And for once, I didn't want it back. After the fallout, I didn't answer my phone for a week. Not out of spite, just quiet. After years of constantly proving, explaining, over-functioning, I wanted stillness. You'd think after 53 missed calls I'd feel guilt, but it was like my body finally exhaled after holding a breath for a decade. I listened to one voicemail, just one. "Claire," my dad's voice, all soft and sugar-coated. "Sweetheart, let's not let this spiral. I know you. You didn't mean to hurt anyone. Let's talk. Let's fix it." Fix what, though? A moment? A life? And that was the pattern. First came the charm, then the cracks. Message 2 was colder. "You embarrassed me. People are asking questions." There it was. Not that I'd been hurt. Not that he'd hurt me. Just that I'd made it visible. Jake texted again. "You really had to do it there, huh?" Real mature. No irony. Just the golden boy doing PR cleanup for Dad, as always. What got me most wasn't that they were upset. It was how quickly they turned the spotlight on themselves. Like their discomfort somehow outranked years of being sidelined. It wasn't just about a party. It was about being erased. The math of being used. When you grow up trying to earn love, you start thinking sacrifice is the only currency that matters. I did the math after I came back home. Over the years, I'd paid for 3 months of their rent when Dad was between jobs, Marina's root canal, Jake's deductible after he sideswiped a mailbox, 4 separate emergencies that somehow always fell right before payday. In total, just under $24,000. Piecemeal, like breadcrumbs leading me back to some illusion of belonging. And still, I was the outsider. Still, He said I made my choices. The thing is, I had made choices, but none of them were ever enough to earn a seat at the table they'd already decided was full. The envelope that unraveled everything, so, yes, the letter hurt him. I knew it would, not because it was cruel, it wasn't, but because it was honest. And honesty, in my family, was always treated like a personal attack. According to a blurry photo my cousin sent me, Dad read it during his thank you toast. Thought it was sentimental. Expected praise. Instead, he got a reminder of who was really bankrolling the dream he built on my silence. Void, in thick strokes, 3 times. Marina walked out halfway through. She had no idea the cruise wasn't actually happening. Apparently, she'd already posted a countdown to Paradise story on Instagram. 1 week later, she moved out. Changed her last name back to, quietly, efficiently. Another text from Dad. Can we talk before this gets worse? Worse than being disinvited from your own father's retirement party? Worse than watching your financial support fund someone else's dream vacation? Worse than realizing you were only ever valued as long as you stayed silent? I didn't reply. Collateral damage and convenient amnesia. Then the rest started crumbling. Aunt Lydia posted some vague Facebook status about family drama. Jake sent me a long message about how he never asked for anything, how it wasn't fair that I'd dragged him into this. Dragged him? I co-signed his damn car loan. But okay. The real kicker came a few days later. Dad's HR rep emailed me. Said he'd listed me as his emergency contact and was trying to apply for a contract position. Said he needed my tax info. I laughed. Out loud. Imagine disinviting your daughter from your party, calling her a disruption, then trying to use her social security number to apply for a job. I responded with one word, no. That same day, he emailed me directly. Subject line, let's try again. I skimmed it. Apologies wrapped in guilt. Regret packaged in financial desperation. He said retirement wasn't going how he'd hoped, that he missed me, that he believed in second chances. Second chances? He'd had 30, probably more. I just hadn't labeled them at the time. The last attempt, 2 days after that, I got a message from Marina. Short, brutal. Hope the check was worth it. He was never going to take me anywhere. No greeting, no closure, just bitterness. And yet, that message made something click, because even she thought I was the safety net, the fallback plan, the unspoken sponsor of the Delaney delusion. Turns out I was, until I wasn't. And without me, the whole thing fell apart. Dad canceled the cruise, quietly, no apology, just vanished from the group thread. He tried to go back to consulting, but word gets around. People started asking why the daughter who used to fly in for birthdays suddenly went radio silent. Why Jake's new car magically appeared when Dad's insurance accidentally lapsed. I never said a word. Didn't have to. When someone pulls the plug on a life supported by silent generosity, the collapse echoes. A new kind of peace. Here's the wild part. I didn't feel triumphant. There was no evil laugh, no revenge montage. I felt free. No more waiting for calls that never came. No more offering support only to be forgotten during the toast. No more pretending silence meant strength. I spent my first real Sunday in a long time just being still. Made breakfast, watered my plants, read a book all the way through. Didn't once check my phone. Didn't feel the weight of obligation. Didn't wonder if I'd been too harsh. Because for once, I wasn't asking for love. I was reclaiming the part of me that used to believe I had to buy it. And that's something no check, voided or not, can ever pay for. The last message came in on a Tuesday morning. Just one ring. Just his name flashing on my screen like a ghost from a life I'd finally let die a quiet death. I let it ring, watched it disappear like steam from a coffee cup. Then I blocked the number. No ceremony, no dramatics. Just the final thread cut with a flick of a thumb. I didn't cry. I didn't second guess it. My hands didn't shake this time. Funny how peace arrives not like a storm, but like fog lifting after years of rain. Because here's the truth. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I was just done. Done playing the daughter who could never do enough. Done writing checks to people who didn't write my name on a guest list. Done showing up only to be told I didn't belong. There's a freedom in knowing that no amount of sacrifice will ever earn what should have been given freely. The world after the collapse life, after that, was quiet, in the best way. I started sleeping through the night, not waking up in a sweat, wondering if I should have said something different, done more, been more. The mental tug of war was gone, and in its place, peace. Simple, still, full-bodied peace. I took myself on a trip not far, just a weekend in a small cabin 2 hours up the mountain. No cell signal, just pine trees, a borrowed book, and birdsong. The kind of silence that holds you, not shuts you out. And while I sipped tea on that old wooden porch, I realized I wasn't grieving him. I was grieving the version of me that kept waiting for him to show up. That little girl who aced spelling bees just to see pride in his eyes. The college kid who worked double shifts to pay his overdue bills. The grown woman who still mailed birthday cards even when hers went unanswered. She deserved better. She deserved me. The family that remained a few weeks later. I got a message from my cousin Maya. Short and sweet, I heard what happened. I'm sorry. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. And that was enough. No blame. No awkward defense of Dad. Just space. We met for lunch. Talked like normal people. Laughed. Cried a little. She told me the party had been weird. That Marina left halfway through. That Dad tried to play it off like the letter was some dramatic misunderstanding. I smiled. Of course he did. The man never met a mirror he didn't argue with. But I didn't feel bitterness toward him anymore. I felt distance. A kind of emotional high ground, not from pride, but from survival. From knowing I had nothing left to give that he hadn't already wasted. Jake's last word, Jake unfollowed me a few days later. No text, no explanation. Just gone. I noticed because my phone pinged when he deleted a comment I'd left on one of his old birthday photos. Just a happy for you. That's it. I think, in his own twisted way, he thought he was being loyal to Dad. Or maybe he finally realized the cruise he was bragging about wasn't happening, and someone had to blame. Either way, it didn't sting. Jake had always been the favorite, the shield, the sun they all orbited. But when the sun burns too hot, even the loyal planets pull away. The ending that wasn't a scene I never wrote back to Dad. Never replied to his email about rebuilding the family. There was nothing to rebuild, because the foundation was cracked from the beginning, stitched together with guilt and expectations. A house where I was welcome only if I brought something useful. My time, my money, my silence. So I didn't slam the door, I just stopped knocking. And if he ever wonders why, he only needs to look at that check I voided. Not for revenge, for truth. What I built instead these days, I pour energy into people who pour back. I host game nights with friends who ask how my week was, and actually listen. I send cards to coworkers who are having a rough time, not because I want to thank you, but because kindness shouldn't be transactional. I learned to say no without apologizing. I don't answer calls that make my stomach twist. I bought a new pair of running shoes and signed up for a 5K not to prove anything to anyone, but because I wanted to feel my own strength in motion. I also opened a separate savings account labeled just for me. Every month, I put in a little more. Not for someone else's cruise. Not for a last-minute favor. Just me. For once, that felt like enough. The final memory sometimes. I think back to that hallway in the hotel, the one where Dad stood, arms crossed, calling it a family event. I remember what I wore. The scotch bottle in my hand. The weight of the envelope pressing against my palm like it wanted to speak for me. I remember how nobody stopped me. And then I remember walking out into the night air. Heels clicking against the sidewalk. Wind curling around my shoulders. A city buzzing behind me. And me finally walking away from the life that always asked me to shrink. The real ending, so no, I wasn't cruel. I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped pretending. I stopped financing fantasies that came with no gratitude and less grace. I stopped writing checks my heart couldn't cash anymore, and I wrote a letter instead, a story that finally belonged to me. That envelope didn't just end a chapter. It gave me a beginning, a life that's quieter, yes, but full, honest. And mine, that I think is the real inheritance. And it's worth far more than any cruise. Story 3. You ever have a moment where you realize, clear as day, that the people who raised you don't actually see you? Like, not just in the I feel invisible way, but in the they would literally let me die kind of way? Yeah, that was me at 16. I was sitting at our scuffed up kitchen table, the same one we'd had since I was in kindergarten. My mom, Sylvia, was across from me, hands folded like we were about to say grace. My dad, Martin, stood behind her, arms crossed, his signature scowl locked in place. They'd just gotten off the phone with the insurance company. I already knew the treatment wouldn't be covered. I also knew it was going to be expensive. But I thought, they'll figure it out. They're my parents, right? Wrong. We're not going to pursue the treatment, Tess, my mom said. At first, I didn't even process it. I just blinked. What do you mean? I asked, because surely I'd misunderstood. Maybe she meant they wanted another opinion or needed more info. Not no. She sighed, like I was being dramatic. We've prayed about it. If it's meant to be, it'll work out. And then my dad added, we can't blow everything we've saved. Your brother's starting university in the fall. This would derail that. I swear my ears were ringing. I just stared at them. You're choosing Ben's college over my life? I finally asked. We're not choosing anything, my mom said. This is about faith, about trusting in God's plan. It wasn't about God. It was about priorities. And I just learned exactly where I ranked. That night, I didn't eat. Didn't cry either. I just sat in my room with the door shut, staring at the ceiling like the answer to what the hell do I do now might be hidden in the cracks. They didn't come check on me. No knock, no nothing. The silence was louder than any fight. Around midnight, I opened my laptop and started researching. Can a minor leave home if their parents won't provide medical care? Does juvenile detention include health care? I wasn't joking. For about 20 minutes, I honestly thought the best plan might be to commit a small crime. Just serious enough to get locked up, but not too serious. I figured at least jail had some kind of health care. Eventually, I remembered my aunt, Meera, my mom's older sister. We hadn't seen her in a while. My parents always made her sound like some washed-up hippie. Lives alone with her cats, probably can't afford curtains. My dad would joke, but Meera always felt different. She listened. She asked real questions. She didn't treat me like I was a guest in my own life. I didn't call her. Not then. First, I packed a bag. Some clothes, my phone charger, and about $60 I'd been hiding in an old mug behind my bookshelf. I waited until the house was dead quiet. Then I slipped out the back door like a ghost. I walked for blocks until I found a bench near a 24-hour gas station. I sat. That's it. Just sat. I don't even know how long I was there. Hours, maybe. Watching the sky go from black to gray. Then a streak of pink. No one noticed me. No one asked if I was okay. I think that's what really cemented it for me, that I was used to being unseen. Growing up, it was always the Ben show. He was the golden kid, the miracle baby, the one with straight A's, piano recitals, summer science camps. I was there. I got secondhand clothes and one-word answers. If Ben got a cold, it was a crisis. If I had a 103-degree fever, I got told to take some Tylenol and go lie down. When he made the honor roll, they hosted a barbecue. When I did, they said, "Good job," then asked if I'd taken out the trash. Even birthdays were lopsided. One year I got a late text from my mom. "Oh, happy B-Day. Busy day at work." While Ben got a backyard bash with custom cupcakes and a magician. I remember eating a cupcake I bought for myself from the school vending machine while I waited for the bus. That's how it was. Still, I kept believing that deep down, they'd step up if it really mattered. If it came down to something serious, they'd be there. That belief died the moment they decided a tuition bill was more important than my heartbeat. I thought about calling my school counselor, but I knew how that would go: mandatory reporting, child services, court, and maybe that was better. Maybe it wasn't, but I didn't want to take that gamble. Instead, I pulled out my phone and stared at Meera's number. My hands were shaking so badly I had to wipe them on my jeans. When she picked up, I couldn't even speak for a second. "Meera," I finally said. "It's Tess." She didn't ask why I was calling at 3 a.m., didn't ask if it was urgent. She just said, "Where are you?" 10 minutes later, she pulled up in this dusty old Honda with duct tape on the bumper. I nearly cried just seeing her face. I walked straight into her arms like a kid in a movie. She didn't ask questions, didn't demand answers. She just said, "Let's get you warm." Her apartment was tiny, and yeah, kind of cluttered, but it smelled like cinnamon and lavender, and it was more of a home than I'd felt in years. I offered to crash on the floor. She didn't even let me finish the sentence, just handed me a pair of old pajamas and said, "You're taking the bed. I'll deal with the couch." That night, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like laundry and safety, I fell asleep without crying for the first time in days. The next morning, Meera made eggs. Real food, not granola bars or toaster waffles. And when I'd cleaned my plate, she finally asked, "Ready to talk?" I told her everything. Every brutal detail. Her eyes didn't well up. She didn't gasp or cover her mouth. She just listened. But I saw her hand tighten around her mug. That's when I realized how much she cared. "You're not going back there," she said. No room for argument. Like it had already been decided. I started to protest about space, about money, but she waved it off. "I'll figure it out. You just stay alive, okay?" By the end of that week, she'd sold half her stuff, called a dozen clinics, and was looking into selling her condo, paid it off, filled with her books and plants and cat figurines. Her whole life, and she was ready to give it up for me. I hadn't even cried when my parents gave me a death sentence. But when Meera said, "Let's get you treated," I cried. Just one tear, but it felt like I finally let something break open that I'd been holding for years. I didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. Because once I got better, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Not for revenge, not even for justice. Just to make sure they never got to pretend they did the right thing. Recovery isn't pretty. Movies make it look like this inspiring montage with soft music and slow but steady improvement. But the truth? It's messy. It's painful. It's lonely in a way that even words can't really hold. Some mornings my hands shook so badly I couldn't hold a fork. Other days my stomach would turn at the smell of food. Nights were the worst: insomnia mixed with fever dreams. Like my body couldn't decide if it wanted to rest or riot. Meera was there through all of it. She made tea, rubbed my back when I couldn't stop shaking, spoke when I needed words, and stayed quiet when I didn't. I still remember the way she'd sit on the edge of the couch, with her glasses slipping down her nose, flipping through her old paperwork, trying to find anything she could sell or trade. She didn't cry about it. She didn't complain. She just kept showing up. It's strange how love can be so quiet and still feel louder than anything else you've ever known. A few months into treatment, my body started catching up to the idea of survival. I could keep food down. I had enough strength to take short walks. Meera would cheer when I made it around the block, like I'd run a marathon. One afternoon, she brought home this cheap little notebook and handed it to me. "What's this?" "Your battle plan," she said. "Battle?" She nodded. "They wanted to write you off. You're still here. That's a battle. So now we make it count." That's how the plan started. Not revenge, not even anger, just a need to speak. To be heard, to let the world know who they really were. I wasn't looking for an audience. I wasn't going to post some tearful video online, but there was one person I knew would listen. One person whose opinion my parents practically worshipped, Dr. Lionel Green. He ran the Ivy Star Advisory Group, an elite college admissions firm that worked with top-tier families. My parents had been obsessed with him for years. They called him the gatekeeper. He wasn't just a business partner to them, he was the validation. The man who could crown Caleb, Ben the chosen one. I remembered him from a dinner years ago. I was maybe 11. My mom made this overpriced roast she burned, and my dad kept making jokes he clearly practiced in the mirror. Ben showed him his science fair ribbon. I was told to stay quiet and not make a mess. Dr. Green was polite, kind of stiff, but what I remembered most was how my parents looked at him like he was royalty. If anyone could see through their golden family act, it was him. So I wrote an email. I didn't rant. I didn't yell through the screen. I just told the truth. I told him who I was, Tess Landry, daughter of Sylvia and Martin. I explained how I got sick and how they had savings. I attached the paperwork showing the treatment quote and the email the clinic sent when my parents declined to move forward. I included the text from my mom telling Ben not to feed into the drama and that I'd come crawling back once she missed home. And then I wrote one simple line at the end. I thought you should know the kind of people you've been building your business with. Then I hit send. I didn't tell Meera. Not yet. I wanted this to be mine. A few weeks went by. I didn't expect a reply. But one morning Meera opened her laptop and I noticed something strange. Their company website, the shiny gold Ivy Star badge at the top, gone. Just like that. Erased. I checked the Ivy Star client list. Their name had been removed. No announcement, no scandal, just one quiet cut. Like Dr. Green had seen enough. It started slow from there. Their online reviews began to disappear. A speaking event they'd been hyping for months, canceled. Their social media went quiet. Less photos, less bragging, less curated joy. Then I heard from a friend, one of the few people who still talked to me after I left. She said her mom pulled her college contract with my parents' firm. She didn't say why, just said they seemed off. By the end of that year, their company had shriveled into a ghost. Clients stopped showing up. Partner schools backed away. Rumors started circling in local forums. Something about ethics, about money, about secrets. They shut down their office, moved everything into their house. Then, a few months later, they lost that too. Foreclosure notice right there on the front door. They moved into a 2-bedroom rental on the other side of town. No more photos of Ben holding trophies. No more sponsored blog posts about raising brilliant kids. Just silence. And the best part? I didn't have to scream. I didn't even have to speak loudly. I just whispered in the one ear that mattered. By the time I turned 19, I had built something. Meera helped me turn my tutoring into a real business focused on helping kids like me. Ones who didn't have the clean-cut backstory or the perfect GPA, but had something worth hearing. I taught them how to write essays that didn't just talk about goals, but about survival, about grit, about how to turn pain into power. Word got around. I went from 2 clients to 30 in less than a year, and every week I paid Meera. She never asked for a dime, but I paid her more than she'd ever made working retail or pet sitting or freelance editing, because she saved me, and I swore I'd make sure she never had to save herself again. On her birthday, I handed her a key. Not just any key. A key to a lake house with a screened porch and sunroom full of bookshelves. She cried. I cried. We drank peach tea and watched the sunset from the back deck. That was the moment it happened. Meera posted a photo of the porch, captioned it, "To my niece. Tess, thank you for giving me a life I never thought I deserved." It was simple, honest, and somehow it found its way back to my parents. I know this because 3 days later, I got an email, then a text, then a call, then another, and another. They wanted to reconnect. "We're proud of you," they said. "We made mistakes, but we're still family." I changed my number, but they didn't give up. They showed up. I was giving a talk at a conference for student mentors. Nothing big, just a panel, a Q&A, some networking after. When I walked outside, they were there. I almost didn't recognize them. My dad looked smaller somehow. His clothes didn't fit the way they used to. My mom's makeup was smudged, her coat frayed at the sleeves. "Tess," she said. Her voice cracked like it hadn't been used in days. "Please, just a minute." I didn't say anything. I waited. "We lost everything," my dad said. "The business, the house, Caleb. Ben doesn't speak to us either. We didn't know," my mom added. "We didn't realize how strong you were, or how far you'd come." I nodded. "You mean strong enough to stay alive when you wouldn't help me?" She flinched. My dad stepped forward. "We were scared. We made a mistake." "No," I said. "You made a choice." They asked for help. Not money, just a hand, a referral, maybe a second chance. I looked at them, and for the first time in my life, I felt nothing. Not anger, not hate, not even pity. "You told me you couldn't afford to save me," I said, "so I'm just returning the favor." Then I walked past them, got in my car, and drove away. That night, Meera and I sat on the back porch. She asked how the conference went. I told her it was fine. I didn't mention them. She passed me a mug of tea and started planning her next trip. She was thinking of Mexico this time, said she wanted to see the ocean from a hammock. We clinked mugs, and I smiled. Because I didn't just survive. I built something, and I built it for the only person who never needed a reason to choose me. It's funny, the things you remember after the dust settles. Not the big blow-ups, but the quiet details. Like how my mom used to sign birthday cards with "Love you forever," even the years she forgot to buy a gift. Or how my dad would talk about sacrifice like it was a badge he wore, when really it was just something he expected from everyone else. I think when people talk about family, they imagine something fixed, unchangeable. But I learned early, family is like land. Some of it's fertile, some of it's scorched. Some you inherit without asking, and some you claim for yourself after walking through fire to find it. By the time I was 23, I wasn't angry anymore. I'd outgrown that. I had a business that paid for my bills, my insurance, and then some. I had clients who trusted me with their kids' futures. I had a team, I had peace, and I had Meera. We traveled that year. Not the Instagram kind of travel, just simple, quiet places. A little beach house in Oregon where the tide rolled in like breath. A cabin in the woods where the stars didn't compete with streetlights. One morning, we sat on a dock, bare feet in the water, coffee mugs warming our hands. Meera turned to me and said, "You know, I almost didn't answer that phone call." I looked at her, confused. "Back then," she said, "I was tired, broke. I thought maybe I wouldn't be enough to help you." "You were," I said. "You still are." She smiled, soft and quiet. "So were you. I think people assume revenge is about drama, screaming, courtrooms, mic drops. But the real kind, the kind that settles in your bones, it's silent. It's slow. It's choosing not to carry what they dropped on you." My parents kept trying, not often, just enough to remind me they were still there, watching the life I built without them. I never blocked them completely. I didn't need to. They couldn't reach me anymore, not really. I heard they tried to start over. New consulting name, new website. But people remember. Reputation sticks. And when you're known for stepping over your own child to fund your favorite's dorm deposit, well, word gets around. They got quiet again. Ben and I spoke once. Just once. He messaged me on LinkedIn of all places. Said he was sorry. Said he didn't know what they were doing at the time. That he believed them when they said I was just being dramatic. I told him it wasn't about belief. It was about standing up when it mattered. He asked if we could catch up sometime. I said I wished him well. I meant it. I still think about the girl I was sitting on that park bench with a backpack and $63, wondering if she'd survive the week, wondering if she mattered enough to fight for. Sometimes I want to go back and sit beside her. I wouldn't say much. just enough. You're going to be okay. Not because they came around, but because you did. Now, every year on my birthday, Meera and I have this tradition. We don't do cake or candles, no big celebrations. Just something quiet. We pick one thing, anything that we never thought we'd do. One year it was riding horses through an open field. Another year we got matching tattoos. Mine's on my wrist, just a small pine tree. She chose a mountain. We laughed when we got them. Not because it hurt, but because we both realized this was the first permanent thing either of us had done for ourselves. There's a photo on my desk now. It's not of my childhood. It's not even from when I was sick. It's a candid Meera took when I wasn't looking. I'm standing outside our tutoring office, sunlight catching in my hair, papers in my hand, phone tucked against my ear. Just working, living, breathing. She caught me mid-laugh. On the back she wrote, "This is what survival looks like when it blooms." Last I heard, my parents were renting a condo near a strip mall. Still together, technically, but not much left holding them there. I don't hate them. I don't wish them pain. I just don't owe them a seat at my table. They left me behind the second they decided a diploma mattered more than a heartbeat. I simply honored their decision. And Meera? She's got a greenhouse now, full of succulents and herbs and tomato plants she talks to like they're old friends. She teaches art classes at the local community center, makes the best cornbread you've ever tasted. And every once in a while she'll tell me, I still can't believe how far we've come. Neither can I. Because what started with a girl on a bench became a life. Not because anyone handed it to me, but because I took the pieces they threw away and built something beautiful. No fireworks, no courtroom showdown, no revenge speeches, just quiet freedom, and a life they'll never be welcome in.